So the game can end through negotiation. Are there other ways?
Yes. Broadly speaking, there are two main paths to ending the conflict, much like in the real world. There's that mutual peace agreement we just discussed.
The ideal outcome, where both sides agree on the terms territory, military limits, reparations, security. Everyone signs on the dotted line.
That's the goal, usually. But then there's the other path, the externally imposed peace settlement.
Ah, when outsiders step in.
And here's where it gets really interesting, and often quite messy. This happens if the two sides just cannot agree on terms, they keep fighting, and eventually both sides reach their exhaustion thresholds.
Both morale and economic limits hit.
Yes, the war has bled both sides dry, essentially. At this point, the game enters its final, desperate phase. It models intervention by major powers or the international community.
How does that work mechanically?
There's a ceasefire mechanism. Each turn, after both are exhausted, the sides roll dice. More dice signals less willingness to talk. If their combined score is low enough compared to the current turn number, it means external pressure is mounting. The next turn is then declared the final one before intervention.
The countdown timer starts.
Pretty much. And when that final turn ends, you get to the international peace treaty stage.
Yeah.
Here, each side totals the economic value of all the enemy territory counters they currently hold. They add a dice roll bonus.
A measure of their success and maybe diplomatic clout.
Exactly. The side with the higher total score is considered to have stronger diplomatic backing, and they get to dictate the peace terms to the weaker side.
So battlefield gains translate directly into power at the enforced peace table.
Absolutely. Which highlights why territory is fought over so fiercely.
And what kind of terms can be imposed?
It's a range. It could be forced return to the status quo, antebellum, everything back to how it was before the war, or it could involve major concessions. One side loses significant territory, faces strict military limitations, maybe even pays heavy reparations.
A victor's peace, essentially, but imposed by outsiders.
Often, yes. And then there's one final chilling step, the political survival test. The side that lost, the one having terms dictated to them, has to make a final dice roll. This determines if their political system, their government, actually survives the humiliation of this imposed peace.
So the regime itself might collapse even after the war ends.
Yes. And the odds are different depending on the political type. A democracy needs a higher roll to survive the shock than an authoritarian or a fanatic regime might.
Wow. That really brings home the domestic consequences of losing a war and facing a harsh peace.
It shows that the end of fighting isn't always the end of the turmoil.
Okay, so we've seen how the game plays, the mechanics, the paths to peace. But the manual includes more, right? Background notes, broader concepts.
Yes, and this is where Pendulum and Peace connects its mechanics to wider ideas in conflict studies, economics, negotiation theory. It adds another layer of depth.
Like what kind of concepts?
Well, it touches on negotiation styles, drawing from Gavin Kennedy's work. He classifies styles as aggressive, demanding something for nothing.
The bully approach.
Kind of. Submissive, giving something away for nothing. Devious, trying to finesse or trick your way to getting something for nothing. And assertive, which is about trading, finding mutual gain. Something for something.
And how does the game reflect these?
It suggests that early in a war, maybe there's more room for that assertive, trade-based approach to find an off-ramp. But as the war drags on, as costs mount, as hatred builds, as one side maybe gains an advantage.
Then the aggressive and submissive styles take over. One side pushes, the other resists or crumbles.
That often seems to be the dynamic, yes. Makes finding common ground much harder later on.
Politics clearly plays a big role too.
Hugely. The game notes how different political systems approach negotiation. Democracies are seen as rational actors, but Tocqueville famously observed they find it very difficult to begin a war and to end it. Public opinion, internal politics, it complicates things.
Makes sense. What about others?
Authoritarian regimes are also considered rational in their calculations, but maybe with fewer competing interests internally. Decisions might rely more on the leader's personal view. And then you have fanatic regimes.
Driven by ideology.
Driven by zeal, as the notes say, and often unlikely to negotiate in good faith, if at all. They might see compromise as betrayal.
And we saw earlier the game has weak, average, strong versions of each type affecting their thresholds.
Exactly. So it's not just the type of government, but also its internal strength and stability that matters for its endurance and negotiating stance.
What about the actual things being negotiated, the tradables you mentioned?
Right, the tangible stuff on the table. Territory is the big one. Specific, cities, regions, those valuable CNI or mineral counters. Then there's war guilt and reparations, who pays, how much,
Hmm.
military limitations on the loser, future agreements like trade deals. And sometimes even the survival of the losing nation or regime itself is implicitly or explicitly on the line.
These are the bargaining chips.
These are the chips. And this ties into an economic concept from James Fearon about the expected value of war.
How does that work?
His idea is, if both sides could accurately predict their chances of winning and the likely cost of fighting, they could theoretically find a settlement range beforehand that would leave both better off than actually fighting the war.
Like splitting the difference based on probability.
Sort of. If you both expect to spend a fortune to maybe win $30 million, perhaps you agree on a $15 million transfer instead and avoid the bloodshed and cost.
But this game handles it differently.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, yes. Because it's not just a one-off payment. In Pendulum and Peace, when territory is transferred, the economic value it generates continues turn after turn for the new owner.
Ah, so it creates an ongoing economic benefit, a payback stream for the victor's war costs.
Exactly. It makes the calculation much more about long-term economic flows than a single payoff.
The manual mentions specific negotiation tactics, too. Ploys.
Yes, like the one-time offer. Here's the deal. Take it or leave it. Offer expires now. It's a high-pressure tactic.
Designed to force a quick decision.
And the notes give a really stark historical example. The Melian dialogue from Thucydides' account of the Peloponnesian War.
What happened there?
Athens essentially made an offer to the small island of Melos: submit or be destroyed. The Melians tragically miscalculated. They overestimated their BATNA.
Their best alternative to a negotiated agreement.
Right. They thought their allies, the Spartans, would surely come to save them. They refused Athens' term.
And Sparta didn't come.
Sparta didn't come. Athens conquered Melos, killed the men, enslaved the women and children. It's a brutal lesson in understanding your real alternatives. And this raises a crucial question. How often, even today, do leaders misjudge their BATNA in a conflict, holding out for a better deal that just isn't there?
A very sobering question. The notes also mention the Paris Peace Accords.
Yes, ending the Vietnam War for the U.S. in 1973. Another incredibly complex negotiation, full of pressure tactics, shifting alliances, and difficult compromises. History is full of these examples.
There's also the phrase "vae victis." What's that about?
Woe to the conquered. It reflects the harsh reality that, historically, the winner of a war usually dictates the peace terms. They secure their interests, demand reparations, often assign blame or war guilt to the loser, regardless of the nuances of how the war started or was fought.
Even with international laws like the Hague and Geneva Conventions.
Well, those exist, yes. But the notes highlight the difference between de jure what is true, according to law, and de facto what happens in practice, on the ground.
So the legal ideal versus the political reality.
Often, yes. Negotiations might reference the law, but power dynamics often shape the actual outcome, making right, effectively.
And the game models this de facto outcome with reparations.
Very much so. As we said, captured territory generates ongoing economic output, a tax for the victor. Forcing military limits on the loser, like only allowing passive defense or complete demilitarization, can also generate a tax value in the game, representing savings or control for the winner. Trade deals add more.
So what does this all mean for the Victoria side, in game terms?
It means they can actually calculate, based on the value of concessions gained, roughly how many turns it will take for the captured economic output and other benefits to pay off their total war costs. It makes the spoils of war very quantifiable.
Fascinating. What about the underlying math or theory behind the game's mechanics?
What's really interesting here is how the design mirrors certain mathematical concepts. The movement of the war front, for example, is described as being like a modified random walk.
A random walk, like a drunkard's path.
Sort of. Dice rolls introduce randomness turn by turn, but it's modified. The advantage mechanic introduces a bias, skewing the odds. And passive fronts remove resistance, accelerating movement beyond pure chance.
So it's not purely random. There are forces pushing the walk.
Exactly. And the simulation results mentioned in the notes are intriguing. Over 10 simulated wars, the average front advance was tiny, like 0.1 territories per turn.
Almost static on average.
On average, yes. With a lot of variation, though. A standard deviation of 2.8 territories means most games saw advances between 0 and maybe 3 territories overall, which fits random walk theory pretty well.
But wait, if the average advance is near zero, how do clear winners emerge?
Because even small, persistent advantages or one side hitting exhaustion first can create that decisive gap over time. The pendulum swings back and forth, but eventually one side often gains a lasting upper hand despite the randomness. It reinforces that war is often a grind.
Okay. Any other theoretical concepts baked in?
Yes, three key ideas from gambling theory are highlighted, especially relevant to early war decisions and negotiations.
Gambling theory, how does that apply?
First, the gambler's fallacy. The mistaken belief that past random events, like dice rolls, influence future ones. I've rolled badly 3 times, I'm due for a good roll.
Which isn't true, statistically.
Not in the short term, no. But it's a powerful psychological bias that can make leaders take risks based on faulty assumptions about luck changing.
Okay, what else?
Second, gambler's ruin. This is the idea that a gambler with finite money playing against an opponent with infinite money, or much deeper pockets, will eventually go broke, even if the odds are fair on each bet.
How does that relate to the game?
Well, both sides might start equal. But as one side starts losing territory, their economy degrades. Remember those permanent reductions. Their capital shrinks. The winning side's effective bank grows. It becomes progressively harder for the losing side to recover, pushing them towards that economic and morale exhaustion towards ruin.
So recognizing when you're on the path to gambler's ruin is critical.
Absolutely. It raises that crucial question. When should you cut your losses and seek peace before the odds become insurmountable?
And the third concept?
Gambler's conceit. This is the dangerous belief that you can control or stop a risky behavior, like continuing a war while still engaging in it, thinking just one more turn will improve our position, then we'll negotiate from strength.
Doubling down, hoping things get better.
Exactly. It's a huge gamble, often based more on hope than rational calculation, and it can easily lead to disaster if things go wrong again.
Wow. Fallacy, ruin, conceit. Those are powerful psychological traps in decision-making.
They really are, and the game mechanics force you to confront them.
So wrapping this all up, this deep dive into Pendulum and Peace, it really shows that war is so much more than just the battles, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's this relentless, intertwined calculation of national will, economic capacity, and diplomatic maneuvering.
A really complex dance between military force hitting those economic breaking points and the actual art of talking peace.
And always with those external forces potentially waiting in the wings to step in if you and your opponent can't sort it out yourselves.
Yeah. What's the final takeaway then?
I think this deep dive really reveals that understanding your own limits, your thresholds, knowing your opponent's vulnerabilities, and making a cold, hard assessment of your BATNA, your real alternatives. These aren't just game strategies.
They're vital in the real world, too.
They're crucial tools for anyone trying to navigate the incredibly volatile landscape of actual conflict and peacemaking.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe a final thought to consider. How might different political systems, those democracies, authoritarians, fanatics, approach these calculations differently when they stare their own version of gambler's ruin in the face?
That's a really interesting question to ponder. How does ideology or system structure change how you react when facing potential collapse? Something for all of us to think about as we watch world events unfold. Makes you look at the news in a whole new light, doesn't it?